Okay, I'll go ahead and call to order this hearing of May 9th, 2024 in the matter of case file Z0067-23-SL, Odyssey Hills subdivision. My name is Joe Turner. I am the county's hearings officer. I'll start with some brief announcements and a summary of the process that will follow, so everyone understands how you can participate in the hearing today. I start by saying I'm not a county employee. I am licensed as an attorney and trained as a planner. I serve under contract to the Board of Commissioners. I say that so you know you are getting a somewhat independent review of the application before me today. My role as the hearings officer is to conduct public hearings and make decisions about excuse me, certain land use matters in Clackamas County. In making those decisions, I'm required to apply the county's existing laws. I am not a policymaker. I don't have the authority to vary from or change the laws. If you think that the laws need to be changed, you can work with Planning Commission and Board of Commissioners to do that. But state law requires that this application be judged based on the laws in effect when the application was filed. As a hearings officer, I'm to provide an unbiased decision maker, and I believe I am unbiased with regard to the application before me today. I have not had any pre-hearing contact with any of the parties regarding the substance of the application, and I don't have any interest in the subject property or any of the surrounding properties. But you have the right to challenge my impartiality, to argue that I'm biased in one way or another, and you can do that when it's your opportunity to testify. Procedure will follow. I'll start by asking staff to summarize their staff report, copies of which are available on the county's website. Then the applicant will have an opportunity to present their proposal and respond to the staff report. Then if anybody else wants to testify in support of the application, they may do so. And then anybody who wants to testify in opposition or with questions or concerns. That should cover everybody who wants to say something about this application. You'll fall into one of those categories. Once everyone's had an initial opportunity to testify, I will give staff and the applicant alone an opportunity to respond to the testimony that was offered. If those responses include any new evidence, I will give everyone a chance to respond to the new evidence. Otherwise, I'll close the public portion of the hearing and announce what I'm going to do. Generally, I will issue a written decision within about 2 weeks after the close of the public record. I will send my decision to the county. The county will send it to parties of record. So anyone who testifies orally or in writing before the close of the record will receive a copy of my decision. If you decide you don't want to testify, but you want to receive a copy of my decision, you can contact county staff and ask them to put you on the list. Anyone with an interest in this application may offer relevant oral or written testimony, but testimony should be relevant to the applicable approval criteria, which are set out in the staff report. Also, please don't repeat testimony offered by yourself or earlier witnesses. Repeating your testimony doesn't make your case any stronger. This is not a popularity contest. Whether everybody loves it or everybody hates it is not an issue I get to consider. The only issue before me is whether the application does or does not comply with the applicable approval criteria. However, it's important that all parties make their best case to me. My decisions are final for purposes of the county, but may be appealed to the Land Use Board of Appeals, or LUBA. However, LUBA generally will not allow new testimony and evidence on appeal. They'll decide any appeal based on the record before me. So if you feel it's important that myself or any future decision maker knows something about this application, you need to make sure it gets into the record before me. In order to appeal my decision, you or someone expressly representing you must testify orally or in writing before the close of the record. And in order to raise an issue on appeal, someone must have raised that issue before me with enough specificity that everyone can understand what the issue is. If you feel you need more time to prepare, you can ask me to hold the record open or continue the hearing. If I hold the record open, you'll have an opportunity to submit additional written testimony and evidence before I make a decision. If I continue the hearing, we can come back and do this again at a later date. But whether or not the hearing is continued or the record is held open for any other purpose, State law requires that I hold the record open for an additional week for the applicant alone to submit a final written argument without any new evidence. The applicant can waive that right if they choose, but if anybody else wants me to hold the record open or continue the hearing, you must make that request before the close of the record today. I close the hearing today, excuse me. Also, my decisions must comply with state law that requires that I issue a final written decision within 120 days after the application was filed. So there's some limit to how long I can continue the hearing or hold the record open. When you testify, please begin by stating your name and your full mailing address. Please spell your last name so I get it right. And if you represent someone else, please say so. There is always technical issues. That concludes my general introduction. Then as far as technical issues with the Zoom platform, when I call for testimony and you decide you want to testify, you can indicate that by clicking on the raise your hand button. There it is. When I move my mouse, a little raise hand icon appears. Click on that. A hand icon will appear next to your name. I'll call for testimony from the list of raised hands. When I state your name and ask you to testify, please unmute yourself. Give us your name and mailing address. Go ahead and give us your testimony. When you're done testifying, please click on the mute button again so we don't get background feedback and noise. And also click on the raise your hand button again so your hand icon goes away. We know you've had the opportunity to testify. But that concludes my introduction, Mr. Blessing.
Okay, I have my script that I will read, and then I'll go right into my presentation.
I forgot the county does this as well. So go ahead. Didn't mean to cut.
Oh, no problem. We're still doing that, right, Darcy? We're still doing this as far as okay.
Number of jurisdictions, I forget who does what.
Yeah. Okay. This public hearing will be conducted virtually using the Zoom platform. Panelists for today's hearing, which include the hearings officers, county staff, and the applicant, have both audio and video capability. Audience members who have joined the meeting will have their mics muted unless they wish to testify, in which case they will be called upon to do so by the county staff moderator. Audience members' video will not be turned on at any time. Today's hearing is being recorded as required by law. The county will make every effort to post the recording on the county website later today. There is a designated time during the hearing when it will be open for testimony. The hearings officer will make it clear when this is. If you want to provide testimony, you will utilize the raise hand feature. Attendees on PC and iPad, you have a raise hand button on the Zoom bar, which is top or bottom, depending on the device. When the moderator switches you over to provide testimony, your screen will look different for a while. Primarily, you will see all applicants' cameras, not just the one who is speaking. Staff will call upon you when it's time for you to provide testimony. Be sure to provide your name and mailing address when you begin. Once you have provided your testimony, your mic will be muted and your screen will be returned to normal. If the record is left open at the end of the hearing and you wish to submit additional written testimony, email written testimony to bblessing@clackamas.us or mail to Clackamas County Planning and Zoning Division, 150 Beaver Creek Road, Oregon City, Oregon, 97045. The staff contact email address is also available on the webpage where you found the Zoom link for today's hearing. Testimony must be received by 4 p.m. on the day the record closes. People who wish to testify and provide their mailing address will receive a copy of the hearings officer's written decision. If you do not wish to testify but would like to receive the decision, you must provide your email or standard mailing address, 1, by email to the staff contact for the application, or 2, by entering it in the Zoom chat function during the hearing. That's the script. Now just give me a second to load up my presentation here. Oops. There we go. Okay. So my name is Ben Blessing, Senior Planner, Clackamas County Planning and Zoning Division. This will be a summary of the staff report to the hearings officer for file Z0067-23-SL. That's a major subdivision, 19 lots, and also an associated planned unit development. Start by just getting the vicinity map on the screen here. You're looking at essentially the subject property between Southeast 92nd Avenue and Southeast 96th Avenue. It's generally the unincorporated Happy Valley area. See the 205 there for reference. Another aerial view, you'll see that it's basically just an undeveloped site surrounded by single-family residential homes primarily. Brief look at the subdivision plan. We can reference back to it, but you'll have 19 lots, and you have pretty much a private road going through the entire site, serving these lots. I'll provide some highlights on the next slide about the roadway improvements. But ultimately, you just have a 19 lots, and it's a planned unit development. So of course they can be smaller, and they have modified dimensional standards. Some highlights. So duplexes are planned on all but 2 of the lots. I'll say that duplexes are allowed outright, just like single-family residential dwellings are, as required in ZDO section 315 of our zoning code. Open space tracts will contain stream channels and a wetland. I'll show a map of the on-site waters in a moment here, but there's just a small, basically a swale that kind of courses down the middle of the property. The applicant's proposing to contain the wetland in open space tracts. There's also a number of small wetlands that have been discovered on site, as noted in the wetland report. All but one of those that, of course, are waters of the state, and regulated, will be filled by the applicant through a state process. And also, water resource areas are not regulated specifically in the ZDO. They are regulated through Clackamas Water Environmental Services. And so the applicant will need to comply with those as well, and that's a condition of approval in the staff report recommendation to the hearings officer. Okay, so there's a small public access way that's going to connect the PD with Southeast 96th Avenue, and I'll go over that in a little more detail on the next slide, and I'll bring back the site plan just to show where that is. And then the private road will provide access to all the new lots. It will not be a public road. So just some roadway highlights. The existing access through tax lot 2801 will be terminated, and the new private road will be the only access to Southeast 92nd Avenue. So you're looking at, go to the existing. So this is the existing conditions map, where there's currently just an existing access that's been there for some years. Can't have 2 accesses on a road. I think it's a collector. So this existing access will be terminated, and then the new access will come through Odyssey. The new private road will come to 92nd, and it'll be configured as such here. You'll also have some lots to the north that take access currently through the site. They will now take access through the main private road there. Sidewalks required on one side of the new private road. That's as proposed. And then, of course, you have your typical frontage improvements for arterial, our collectors and local roads, 92nd Avenue and Southeast 96th Avenue. And those will be built to the county cross section for each applicable roadway type. And then finally, access to Southeast 92nd Avenue is connected via an access way, which I did not get it on these images, but essentially it runs from the private road through this flagpole segment, and will provide a connection to 96th Avenue, thereby allowing pedestrian connectivity. There is your existing conditions map, again noting the wetland areas. I believe I believe it's wetland E that's being preserved, while the others that are, again, regulated waters of the state will be filled by the applicant. The applicant can speak to that if any part of that is mistaken, but they will have to be, if they're regulated waters, they'll have to be dealt with through the state, possibly federal as well. So there's your stream channels, and those will be protected again. And then you have basically just a moderately sloped property. It's not considered steep slopes, except for that small flagpole portion there, which again, the applicant is proposing to have uh, a pedestrian access way, which is less disturbance than a full roadway segment. And there's some slight steep slopes really associated with prior adding of adjoining properties, likely not native slopes. But there's just a small segment in this upper section, north, that'd be the northeast corner, if you will, of the main part of the lot. So again, some other notes. Applicant will comply with Clackamas Water Environmental Service standards for surface water treatment, sanitary sewer, and the aforementioned water quality resource areas or the buffers. Those will all need to meet WES's standards and their rules and regulations. There was a traffic impact study, sorry about that, that was submitted recently, confirmed there are no additional warrants for new infrastructure. That's been added as an exhibit. The numbers, traffic numbers and so forth are contained in there, and no additional requirements overall for roadway infrastructure. And then just finally, final action on this permit shall be 7/7/2024. There's no real time remaining to ask for time extensions, which is all detailed in Exhibit 5. With that, the recommendation is approval subject to conditions of approval. And thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Stop
Fossey.
sharing here. There we go.
Couple of questions.
Yep.
The site plan, you referred to this, there's a stream on the site, but the site plan shows us a stormwater channel.
Yeah.
Is it a stream subject to the county's stream regulations, setbacks, et cetera?
Well, if it's not subject to the ZDO standards in section
Okay.
4 or any of the other applicable ZDO sections, just WES's standards.
Okay. And I'm just writing that in my notes. On page 30 of your staff report, it talks, get there. It requires the applicant to grant an access easement to the properties to the north that are going to use Odyssey. I didn't see a condition to that effect. Should there be? Be there and I just missed it, but if somebody can point it out, that'd be great.
Yeah, Ken, can you speak to that? I believe I thought I saw one in there, but I may have missed it too. And do you mind talking about that, Ken? And then you're on mute too.
Yeah, I'm just looking at that.
We can come back to that. I can let you look, and if you find it great, let me know. If not, we can address it.
Just trying to see if that's, let's see. What is that? A7 talks about constructing the road and identifies those particular tax lots.
And I'm not sure it requires closure of the existing. It may require closure. I think it was just the easement, but
Oh, did we lose you? Did we lose you, Ken? Oh,
no,
sorry.
no, I'm just
Sorry about that.
verifying. I mean, we can verify whether that's covered, but it talks about constructing the road,
yeah,
focusing that road in an easement, or that the road is serving those tax lots. So the intent is that there would be an easement
okay.
for that private road that serves those tax lots as well. And then
Which
we did have
condition are you looking at?
Was that, let's see, 2A7, is that right?
And that's on your staff report or your comments, Ken?
The staff report.
Just looking up, find the conditions.
I have that right.
Yeah, I made add some language to that condition, just to clarify that they have to provide an easement.
Right, I think that's the intention, but it may not specifically state it as clearly.
Okay. Page 20, I think I have a question. Let me get there. On page 20, about the bottom third, the italicized findings note that other steep slopes appear to be non-native fill, and I'm not sure that those findings are relevant to the standards. It just talks about.
Yeah, so if I could, so in other words, just the steep slopes are just as they are.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what
I figured. I made edit that because it's not related to the standard, but in your staff report, I note that several of the staff find several of the criteria are not clear and objective. I totally understand that, having been involved in the process in Washington County where this issue came up. There are some other standards that appear to me that may not be clear and objective. Unless somebody has an objection, I'll just email those to staff after the hearing. This is more of an FYI. You either found that they were met or they didn't apply, but there's some that do appear to me to be not clear and objective. You may want to, when you edit your code next to fix these issues, you may want to include those. So I'll just email those to you.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Has an objection. And page 35, I think was my last one. No, I don't. So that was the extent of my questions. Thank you, Mr. Pleasant.
Yep.
Is the applicant here represented, Mr. De Jong? I think you're muted at this point.
Sorry.
There you go. Now we can hear you.
With me is Eric Lee. He's the owner of Odyssey Development, and he will be coordinating the development of this project. Thank you, staff, for your presentation, and also you too, Mr. Turner. You did raise a couple of questions regarding the easement to 90.
Mr. Young, can I get you to state your name and your mailing address for the record?
Okay, sorry. John D. Young, Tech Engineering, Post Office Box 80483, Portland, Oregon 97280.
Thank you.
On the plans that we submitted, there is an existing access easement that goes from those four houses on the north end of 92nd. It's identified on our plat. It's document number 71-137-33. So it's been in existence since 1971, probably when those houses were constructed.
Yeah.
So that easement exists. So we obviously will also provide access to them. We have no issues with that. In fact, I've talked to those property owners to the north, and they seem to be very happy that they get a new road to drive out on rather than a 10-foot wide gravel road. It's probably, fortunately, hasn't been needed by the fire marshal, because I suspect that might be an issue. So
yes,
so they're very happy.
The only concern there is issues that you're relocating it, so the existing easement is further south.
It goes all the way to the north line. We will be vacating that easement. We are actually going to use it for a pedestrian connection.
But won't you need that easement, or won't you need a new easement on Odyssey Avenue? Or yeah.
Well, Odyssey Avenue will be an easement over its entirety, subject to public access. Correct? Public. I don't know how the county surveyor wants to word it, but typically private streets are granted public vehicular access.
Are you gating the entrance? It looks like.
No, we're not gating.
Oh, okay. I just saw the split there, and there's some lines that
we have some extra width to deal with there, so we're trying to put an island in the middle.
Yeah.
And no gate at this time.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, it's not a significant issue. I just want to make sure that because it was mentioned in the staff report, I didn't see a condition. I wanted to make sure it was addressed.
Right.
Not a significant issue for me.
And then you guys did mention the wetlands. We've been working with Shad and Associates on the wetland and getting all the approvals from the wetlands. They're working on the WQRA permit through West. And just to clarify, wetland number C is already DSL has determined it to be non-jurisdictional. We are preserving wetland E, wetland F, and wetland D are proposed to go away, but DSL has a regulation, I guess, or a code that allows up to 50 cubic yards of fill annually to be dealt with as far as wetlands are concerned. And we did a calculation for Schott and Associates that shows that number to be 12 cubic yards would basically eliminate those two smaller wetlands. So we're preserving E in the tract. C is non-jurisdictional. And again, wetland, the stream corridor or the ditch that runs through the property, we are providing a 25-foot buffer per West's regulations, and we submitted a landscaping plan and a enhancement plan for that stream corridor.
Mm-hmm.
I do have one question on page.
Before you move on from wetlands, you mentioned several letters, but was it F and B? F as in Frank and B as in boy that you're filling?
No, not B. We're filling F and D. D as in dog.
D as in dog. Thank you.
And C is considered non-jurisdictional already in some of the wetland reports that the staff has, and we will preserve E and what I call tract D.
Is there a wetland A?
Wetland A is the upper reaches of B. There's actually, if you look at the wetland map, it doesn't connect there, and that's why we selected that route for our roadway.
But A is going to be filled.
A
along with B.
Wetland A, storm channel A, is the upper reaches of our property where it leaves 96th Avenue.
Okay. Okay, got it.
And the wetland B is the lower portions of that channel.
Yeah.
And those two will be preserved intact along with the 25-foot buffer with enhancement.
Yeah, thank you.
Should I move on, or you have more questions?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. On page 13, and maybe this is more for Ken Kent. On 96, the county engineering department is requiring us to improve a half street up there, which is about 50 feet. When I drive up 96, I see that there is no existing curb or sidewalk. We're not opposed to the additional dedication or even the curb, but one of the requirements in the staff report on page 13 again, let's see, it's number E, the third condition on that page. It says a landscape strip and then a 5-foot sidewalk. Could I work with the county to try to encourage maybe a curb tight sidewalk? Because I'm concerned about that strip of landscaping there being maintained properly. I would rather see it just go from a curb to a curb tight sidewalk and then natural vegetation down the hill like we're proposing. And also that sidewalk will have less impact on the existing drainage channel. Can you hear me, Ken? Is that something that you can?
Mr. Kent, you want to respond? Just.
Let's see, the landscape strip is a standard. Typically when we're, eliminating that, it's more of a design modification process. I mean,
is that something they could apply for after the preliminary approval?
Well, that's possibly. I mean, we typically would handle that through the land use case, so it's clear what's being required.
And if I could follow up on that, yeah, just the design modifications should generally be before the land use permit process, so they can go to hearing and be part of the record. And so if that, even if a design mod were to be allowed, it seems like it might be a land use modification after if this application's approved, that kind of thing.
Well, I'm not going to make a big deal out of it, go through a long process, but I'm just thinking from a practical experience that having a curb tight sidewalk there might be more beneficial to the neighbors on either side. But I understand your standard is a planter strip. And the reason I didn't do this before, I guess, is Ken is aware we did provide some design modifications earlier on in the process before this hearing, but I guess I didn't anticipate this to be improved. I didn't anticipate this 50-foot. So when I received your staff report just a few days ago, that's when I noticed that this was a potential issue that I might have. So I didn't have time to do a design modification prior to the hearing.
Could we
But
hold the record open?
I don't want to delay the hearing. I don't want to
Okay.
delay the approval because of it.
Okay.
But if I can work with Ken Kent in the future to determine what is the best use of this, I would like to leave that option open, if possible, if it's okay with
Yeah.
Ken.
You'll have to comply with the code, and if there's a way to do it, great. But I'll leave that to the applicant staff to figure out if there's a different future review, final engineering review process.
And other than that, I have no issues with the staff report. I again thank Ben for being diligent and working with us on this and getting it through the process. It's been kind of a time-consuming thing, and not because of him, because of unseen circumstances that arose during the course of our review. Primarily the wetland appearing when we weren't aware that it existed when we first started. So with that said, thank you all for your time, and I'll be here to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Young.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anybody else who'd like to testify in support of this application? If so, please raise your hand now by clicking on the raise your hand icon. Not seeing anybody. Is anybody who'd like to testify in opposition or with questions or concerns? Lily, and your last name is just SCH. I think we unmute. Okay, it looks like you're unmuted. Can you give us your name and mailing address?
Hi, good morning. My name is Lily Anna. Last name is SCHIRIAC. Mailing address is 10420 Southeast 92nd Avenue. Our property borders the largest part of this new development. And being on here from the beginning when everybody was just signing in, the reason why there's not a lot of residents on this Zoom call is because a lot of residents did not get notified. So talking to our neighbors, a lot of them did not know of this Zoom call. So whoever was able to made it, that I was able to, one being directly behind us and to the right of me. So that's why there's not a lot of people on to oppose or to say for the property development. Okay. I've never done this before. I've never been on a hearing. So let me know if I'm saying something wrong or if I'm having positive
No problem. We'll give you, most people haven't done this before, so we'll give you lots of leeway.
Okay. The one thing I think was stated that duplexes are allowed on this site, this amount. Not knowing as an owner, as a resident in this street, being so much of our property touching this new development, we didn't know it was going to be duplexes. From what we understood, it was going to be single family homes that were ranch style, just like the rest of our homes in this neighborhood, just to fit with the criteria and the aspect of the neighborhood that has been here for such a long time. The second thing would be the homes that were sold next to us. One of them was an owner named Lorraine. Her property is adjacent to our property, which from the starting of owning our property and her being our neighbor, one of the older neighbors, and ours being one of the older neighbors, we knew that there was an easement connecting our property to where that storage drain or whatever the water runoff is. The lot 16 and 17 is behind them. that's what I wanted to address. If that still is in existence or not, because our property is about an acre, and that would be connecting our back acreage to the street that is currently there, or touching one of the houses that was there but then was taken down during the purchase of the land connecting ours.
Mhm.
So
The
I'm not sure.
stormwater channel, is that what you're referring to? You're wondering
Yes.
if that's going to remain,
No, if
or is the easement?
so so the owner next to us, Lorraine, um we were always in agreement that there was an easement connecting our property to the next street, which is that street that they're redeveloping and moving, which would be Odyssey Way or Lane or whatever it is. I'm not sure how to explain it because the map that I'm looking at was provided through the website at Clackamas County, so I'm not
Mhm.
very familiar with north, south, east, west lines that are added to it. And there's nothing besides 16 and 17 and the little roundabout as reference to me because
Okay.
the street is moved. So, because we're on 92nd Avenue is our property.
Yes, I think I see where you are. Are you immediately south of the drainage way, the drainage
I
channel, or
we're
farther?
so tract G, I'm assuming that is a drainage,
It kind of
that
goes east and west
large
across the
lot.
side.
Say that again.
I'm trying to, let me see if I can make my, I've got the plans on another screen. I'm trying to make it bigger and it's not working.
Gotcha.
Um, oops, what did I do? There we go. Went up a page and I found where you're talking about. Okay. You abut track G, is that correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
so it goes tract G, then it goes 16. So that L shape,
Yep.
if you
Okay.
continue that whole property to 92nd, that's ours. So
Right.
behind
Got it.
16 and 17, there's a tiny little indent from our known being with our neighbor. We were always knew of that fact. And I remember seeing it on city plans when we went to the county, um, or something of this such, because we had some issues with the county about 10 years ago in regards to this property. So I'm wondering, is that easement still there, access to our property to be able to use our back acreage? Or is that something that this new development just encompasses and gets rid of?
Okay. I'm going to see if summarize what I think you're saying. Is the easement located on this site in your understanding of the easement?
I no, I don't.
Okay.
Not in the way I'm understanding. Because if you look at the easement that they stated about 92nd Drive, how they're making it to the other uh, homeowners, because
Hmm.
the
Yeah.
road that's currently there is not maintained by so that the storm drain basically, which runs mostly on the property of the person who's trying to create these subdivision, is not taken care of. The property is left abandoned, and everything is overgrown and coming onto our property where it touches. So it's very much not maintained, and so that gravel road gets washed out because they do not maintain that storage drain. So there's blackberries, they cut down trees, it's in the storage drain. So all that water runoff goes
Hmm.
onto that gravel road. So it sucks for those property owners who have to take that gravel road home because it's
Right.
not the best.
And the
Um,
applicant plans to eliminate that gravel road and replace it, move it
yeah,
north of Odyssey. As far as the easement that you believe might be on your, or provide access to the rear of your property, if it is a recorded easement, this development is not going to change it.
okay,
If it's just an informal agreement or something between you and your the prior owner of the abutting property, then it may not remain. That's a legal issue that a private legal issue you could consult an attorney to assist you with, or you can just look at the county records and see if there's an easement on for the benefit of your property. It may be on your title records or maybe on the title records of the adjacent property you're referring to. But if it exists and it's then this development can't change it.
Okay. Is there an option for the the staff that's on here to help me find that, since I'm not well versed in this situation,
They
and
may
leave
be
that
able to,
open?
you can contact them outside the hearing and they may be able, if they can't address the issue, they may be able to at least tell you where to look, who to contact. That may be through the county assessor's records, or they may have the record themselves. They may have access to it. Staff may have access to it, but it is something that they may be able to assist you with, or at least provide you some direction.
Okay, I appreciate it. And then in regards to duplexes, that's not something that can be changed. That's something that
It is
will go
allowed by
forward.
the code, so I can't change it now.
Okay, that's unfortunate just because of the way our neighborhood is, and they're all single family ranch homes, some with a basement and some are just flat. So it kind of takes away from the neighborhood being as is. And
I
so
understand.
um I had one more thing to say. Oh, question. Is it stated anywhere when this project is supposed to start? Because it's been about 10 to 15 years in the making. And it's kind of a
Yeah.
little bit long-winded, which I
Uh,
understand because it takes a long time with all this stuff that's happening.
That's something I can ask the applicant to address when they respond to all the public testimony. They're required to begin, I'll ask staff to address that as well. There is a deadline. I can't remember off the top of my head what it is for Clackamas County, that they begin construction in order to get their final plat approved. So
Okay.
basically get the roads in and the utilities in. So there is a deadline that can be extended with approval from the county, but there is definitely some limit to how long, when they have to start, basically, and how long it takes. But I'll ask the applicant if they can address that as well. We'll do
Okay.
that
And
when they respond to all the testimony.
perfect. And then my last thing is, can I kindly ask the property owner or development owner to upkeep that property, because it is very hard for us as neighbors to cut back those blackberry bushes because we cannot access those 6 acres, and it does encroach on our property a lot through our fence that it warps through. Like blackberries is invasive,
Yeah.
and it's very hard to contain. We've talked to the residents that live in the 2 homes that are also owned by the property owner, but they don't do much. So if that can be addressed, I don't know if this is a proper way of addressing it or not,
You
but
absolutely. I can't make them do it, so to speak,
yeah.
but what you could definitely ask, and I'm sure they would. I presume they would be willing to do what they can to keep the neighbors happy while they're building this.
Because we don't have phone numbers,
Yeah,
so there's not
I
much
understand.
to get talked to besides the people who are renting or now own the next property next to us, because it's a big jumble of confusion of who's the owner and who's the worker and who's the renter.
Mhm.
So
The applicant's contact information is probably on the application materials as well, which are available on the county's website.
okay.
So, but the applicant may be willing to contact you directly and discuss that issue.
Awesome. Well, that was all I had to say. I guess if the duplexes stay, they stay.
Yeah, that's not something I can prohibit because state law and the county code both allow duplexes.
Okay. I appreciate your time, Mr. Turner.
Thank you, ma'am. Have a good afternoon. Mr. Blessing, can you close your PowerPoint because I can't see the raised hand.
I didn't.
Oh wait, that's me. Sorry, never mind. I had another screen open right over the top of this Zoom meeting. I have more raised hand. There we go. The lady who was just speaking just removed her hand. Eric Davis. Mr. Davis, looks like you're muted. You'll need to unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
There we go. Now we can.
Great, thank you. I am Eric Davis, ERIKDAVIS. I live at 10379 Southeast 96th Avenue, Happy Valley, Oregon. And I have a couple questions. Hopefully I can keep them focused. The proposed development affects 2 of our property borders, potentially 3, with the proposed sidewalk on 96th Avenue. I am just south of the flag lot, which will be the public access point.
Mhm.
And I'm just hoping to get a little bit of clarification as to what the curb tight sidewalk that Mr. DeJong proposed, what that entails versus what a landscape strip is. And
Sure.
then I also heard a couple different numbers as to the length of these. I heard 5 feet, I heard 50 feet. And I'm just curious as to what or how big of an impact these are going to have on the roadway.
I think the 50 feet is the length, the amount of frontage on 96th Avenue that this site has. The 5 feet, I think, is the width of the sidewalk itself. I'll
Okay.
ask the applicant to correct me if I'm wrong, but that's my understanding. As far as the landscape strip, um, curb tight sidewalk means that the sidewalk abuts the road. A landscape strip or a planter strip means that the sidewalk set back roughly 4 feet. It varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, and then there's a strip of landscaping between the sidewalk and the road. The code requires that the applicant provide a landscape strip um, between the sidewalk and the road. Mr. DeYoung is hoping the county, there's a process for elimination of that landscape strip because he's concerned about it not being maintained or being difficult to maintain. So that I hope that answers that question. If you have follow-up questions, feel free.
Yes, I do. So the 50 feet in length, is that just a complete length of the sidewalk itself? So that would span essentially 25 feet on either side of the walkway into that strip of land?
No, the 50 feet is how much of the site abuts 96th Avenue. So the applicant would be
Oh,
required
gotcha.
to build a sidewalk, a north-south sidewalk on the west side of 96th Avenue.
Okay, cool. But it does not extend beyond that.
No, it doesn't
Okay.
extend to the north or the south. They will also provide a public pedestrian path, which may be soft surfaced or gravel. But anyway, they have to provide a public access way through this site between 92nd and 96th Avenues.
Okay.
So there'll be a public easement on the sidewalk within the private street, and then from the end of near the end of the private street, I guess from that the short flag portion of that private street where you're basically near your property and
Yes.
track E, there'll be a public access way that will continue on to 96th Avenue and connect to that sidewalk on 96th Avenue.
Okay, perfect. That answers that. Thank you. But I do have some follow-up questions in regards to that walkway. Who will be in charge of maintaining the kind of the plant life in there? Because at this point, it is kind of just to echo Lillian's sentiment. There's tons of blackberries in there, and they sprawl into our yard. And I'm just hoping that with the walkway, someone will maintain that. Do you know who is responsible for that?
The applicant will be required to create a homeowners association. So all the lot owners in this development will own those tracts and be required to maintain them.
Okay, cool. Thank you. And then as far as the waterway goes there, that kind of water collection drainage, is it tract A? That seems to be seasonal. So right now it seems to be flowing with the dry weather that we're going to have. I can't imagine it's going to be flowing for much longer. But in the wintertime, that's flowing pretty much full time. Is there a plan for the waterway and the collection of that water? Is that going to be like subterranean, or I'm not sure if I saw anything.
They're not going to change what's there now. It's kind of a stream, a ditch, whatever you want to call it, and it's going to remain that. They're required to provide a 25-foot buffer on either side, so they can't develop up to it. As far as runoff from this site, they are required to runoff from roofs and driveways and roads, sidewalks, etc. Any new impervious surfaces, they'll have to collect that. And if it's a pollution generating surface, a road, sidewalk, etc., they have to treat the runoff to remove pollutants, and then they have to detain it. They have to hold it on the site in some form, in a pond or an underground tank, and then release it presumably into the ditch there, the on-site ditch, at less than pre-development rates. So they can't increase the rate at which water flows off this property. They actually have to decrease it.
Gotcha. But as the waterway is right now, it's pretty much going to be preserved as
Yes.
is. Okay,
Yes,
cool. Answers my questions. Thank you so much.
you're welcome. Thank you. I just have DEV. I don't have a last name, or I'm not sure if that's the full first name. You'll need to unmute yourself. You're still muted. We're not hearing you yet. You're still mute. My screen indicates you're muted. There should be a unmute button on your screen if you move your mouse. It's on the bottom left of mine, but I don't. And we're still not hearing you. I'm just assuming you're trying to talk and we're not hearing you yet. Staff have any suggestions for this technical issue?
I sent a request asking them to unmute, but there's
Okay.
no response.
One option, if they sign out and sign back in, could that potentially resolve their ability to unmute? Kind of a restart and see what happens. That's the extent of my technical ability. Oh, there we go. You missed. This same person has their hand up in a different. Can we unmute them?
In her mind, she thinks it's townhomes.
Ms. Renner, can we unmute the?
Yes, I'm working on
Okay.
it.
Here we
Really
are.
hard to...
Okay,
Can you hear me
now we're
now?
hearing you. Thank you.
Sorry about that. I'm in the office.
That's okay.
so I
I'm glad you
apologize for
found a
next to it.
solution.
Thank you for your patience. My name is Devin Singh, DEVUNSINGH, property address 10550 Southeast Stevens Way, Happy Valley, Oregon. There's not too many technical questions. I just have 3 questions here. So the first one obviously being the most talked about question as far as all the neighbors go would be the decision-making process between duplex versus the residential homes, as obviously we're basically cramming duplexes in the middle of a bunch of residential homes. As you said, that's to code, but I just wanted the John or the developer to give their input on that, on their decision-making process as to why they thought that was better, if they can do that. And then the second question would be if pictures of like the design of the duplexes and then the estimated cost of what they're going to sell for as it pertains to like property values surrounding what that would be, if that's accessible or when that will be accessible. And then the last question would be, there's trees that are on our property line, either a foot onto theirs or ours. I'm not sure. So when they build these duplexes to retain privacy in those trees, will there be someone coming by to confirm cutting them beforehand, before when the building process begins? So those are going to be just the 3 points that I hope that John and his colleague next to him can touch on when they have a chance.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And Mr. Sen, if you want to click on the raise your hand button so your hand goes down, and sorry, I forgot your last name. Ms. Shurik? Shurik? I'm not sure how you pronounce that. Good. Ms. Shurik, there we go. Now you're unmuted.
Yes. Question, off of 92nd, where the entrance will be, are they continuing a sidewalk on 92nd or just a tiny strip of where their street starts?
It's my understanding, and I'll ask staff to correct me if I'm wrong, that they have to build a sidewalk along the entire amount of frontage that they have on 92nd Avenue. I'm not sure, based on the plan in front of me, how much frontage they have, but they have to build a sidewalk for the extent of their frontage.
And by frontage means the property.
How much of their property abuts that street?
Okay, so basically almost to where my property is.
I assume so.
Because the develop is it that what they own or what the development is? Because from what
What
I
the
understand,
development is. If they own
oh,
another, I understand they own another parcel there
yeah.
between that flag area and your property, but that's not proposed for development, so they don't have to do any improvements on that section.
Okay, so then I'm assuming it won't reach what my property is for
That's my
site.
understanding, yes.
Okay, thank you. That was it.
You're welcome. Does anybody else want to say anything who has not had a chance to testify? Not seeing anybody. Mr. Blessing or Mr. Kent, any response from the county?
Mr. Turner, you have another hand up.
Oh, thank you. I looked away from my screen. Langson? There we go.
Yes, my name is Rebecca Langson, and the property address is 9410 Southeast Idleman Road, Happy Valley.
Okay.
We're on property, it's on an easement that's to the north of this property. My parents have owned this property since 1952 and later built in 62. So I have several questions. I thought this hearing was about the R10 current zoning law being changed or being suggested to change to these
No, it's not. They're developing consistent with the existing R10 zoning.
the development. So my understanding of R10 zoning is that those lots are supposed to be a minimum of 100 by 100. Is that correct?
If it was a standard subdivision, yes, but they're proposing to build it as a planned unit development, a PUD, which allows it's kind of a balance that the code allows to in exchange for preserving open space and natural areas on the site, the stream and other open space tracts. They are allowed some flexibility with regard to the lot sizes and other dimensional standards.
So you mentioned that it's a PUD, so it's a planned development, and there's going to be a homeowners association, and it's going to be duplexes. So I'm trying to wrap my head around the fact that are these going to be owned duplexes in a homeowners association, and those homeowners then are going to be responsible for maintaining the waterways, landscaping and such?
The property owners, whoever owns those lots will be members of the homeowners association responsible for the maintenance.
So
whether those are the residents or not is not something that the county can regulate.
Okay, so then these duplexes are going to be for sale, or is it the lots that are for sale for potential development people to buy these lots that has a duplex on it?
That's kind of up to the applicant and future owners. Presumably they will sell the lots or the homes on the lots, and people can rent out half and live in half, or unless they can further divide it, they can't sell individual, half of the duplex. So somebody's going to have to own a lot and a duplex, and they can.
So
and the person, I'm sorry, I meant to follow up. Whoever owns that lot and duplex can live in half, lease half, or lease out both halves. The county cannot regulate the ownership of those duplexes and lots.
Okay, I'm concerned based on the density, since it is, like Lily was saying, everything around it is much larger parcels. My parents' parcel is larger as well, just like hers. So the concern, obviously, for all of us surrounding it is this density that's coming in and the ability of existing infrastructure to support that density. Because currently 92nd Avenue, according to your TIS report, they said they did it. There's not going to be much of an impact on that roadway. That is a pretty narrow road currently, and it does not have any curbs. There aren't any sidewalks. And you're adding in all of these units with all these potential people coming in, and there's only one way in and one way out. How is that traffic going to be regulated then at the base of that street where it intersects with 92nd?
Oh, the Odyssey Avenue that they're proposing? Is that what you mean?
Whatever they're calling it, because for years it's been this access road to the original piece of property that was there that had an easement for those houses that are to the north that are on that gravel road.
the intersection will be stop sign controlled at 92nd Avenue. The homes to the north will use this proposed new road, Odyssey Avenue, to access 92nd from the existing easement to the north.
Okay. In regards to the water wetlands, so there were some homes built directly above this piece of property and slightly to the north and the east of it that had the same problem with the water wetlands and had to build in a holding tank, holding pond, if you will. And that water does collect. There's so many springs on that hill. It's very difficult. So my question in regards to the holding is, are they going to have this big holding pond like the other piece of property does? And then that regulation of the water off of that, as you mentioned, they can't exceed the current runoff rate for the structure. So we know that there's all these springs. Are they going to bury this? They think they're going to bury the springs, or are they going to put some sort of pipe underground to be able to flow that water off into the existing system?
I'll ask the applicant to address that.
Okay.
Anything else you wanted to address, Ms. Langston?
Just, we're all concerned about the impact on our property values because it's so rural right now with the R10 that we're all very concerned about the impact of having this density in our backyards.
Okay. Property values is not something that's regulated by the code, the county.
I understand.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else who'd like to say anything about the application? Okay. Mr. Blessing?
Just a couple of really quick things to follow up on. Mr. Turner obviously addressed most of them, but I just would again reiterate that the duplex matter, that was a state requirement for basically all jurisdictions over a certain size were required. The county didn't have really a say in the matter, so they just have to implement state law there. Certainly understand the concern, though. Obviously, there was also the question about that Mrs. Laxon had about the ownership kind of scheme of the duplexes, and just to point out again that there'll be a single duplex, 2 units on 1 lot. Now, there's also a provision, and then again, this goes back to state law, that they could potentially be further divided through what's called a middle housing land division. That would be a separate land use process, but that isn't allowable for any middle housing to be further divided. No one has the applicant has not proposed that as of yet, but I just wanted to point that out.
And then just to clarify that a middle housing land division would allow them to create 1 duplex lot into 2 lots, or basically attached. They would no longer be a duplex because it would be allowed separate ownership of each unit, but they would still be a duplex attached to structure, rather.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. And then I think the only thing I wanted to touch on, let me get my notes here.
While you're looking, I'm just going to further clarify for the public that middle housing, if future owners or the applicant could seek that as a separate approval in the future if they chose to. That would require additional county review and approval and public notice. So it's not proposed here. It's just acknowledging that is something that state law allows currently, that it may address some of the neighbors. If that happened, but a lot of ifs in there. If that happened, it may address, it would allow separate ownership of each unit, which would be more likely to be owner occupied than a duplex.
Right. The last thing, the notice. There was a question about the notice to neighbors. Basically we're required to send notice to neighbors within 300 feet of this development. So it sometimes the adjoining neighbors or the surrounding neighbors rather fall within that radius. Sometimes they don't, and we do try to post we do post the applications on the website, but that's basically just addressing that. And the question about the easement, the drainage easement on lot 16 and 17. Yeah, just to reiterate, you can reach out to me. We could also talk to the county surveyor, put you in touch with the county surveyor who might be able to help get those records too and see if they're existing. So that's all I have in general.
Okay. Mr. Kent, did you have anything you wanted to add just in case?
I don't have anything further.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Mr. DeYoung?
Yeah, thanks for all the responses from the neighbors, and I'll try to respond to them as they showed up on my screen. First was the owner of 10420. She asked about an easement that may exist on her property. Our surveyors, this plat map that we prepared didn't show offsite easement, so if she has an easement that affects this property, we will certainly accommodate that, as you mentioned, Mr. Turner. And as to the timing of this project, she said this has been ongoing for a long period of time, 15 years plus. And that is true. This site has been looked at by various different developers, and currently the Mr. Lee and myself, we were involved about 2.5 years ago. So we've just been recent to this property. And as far as some of the houses on the adjoining that are still owned by the applicant, we did some property line adjustments early on before we submitted for the application, just so that these houses that were on 92nd could be renovated and sold. One recently has been renovated, the one at 10300, and I believe it sold and closed within the last couple of weeks. And we've had some issues with the house. I guess I shouldn't say issues, but the tenant there had an extended period of time to stay. He's moving out soon, and we anticipate renovating that house, hopefully starting within the next month or two. And the house that was renovated sold for in the 750 range, and the one at 10410 will probably be in excess of that. As to the units that are being built here, Ben mentioned middle housing. The middle housing aspect of this development, we hope to utilize. We anticipate these to be owner-occupied duplexes, and we expect the price range to be in the 650 to 850 range each. So they'll be well-constructed units. As to Mr. Davis's concerns regarding the waterway, right now we realize there is a lot of blackberries on the site. Part of our requirement from Wes is to remove the invasive species and plant native plantings, and that's all shown as part of our landscape plan that was submitted to the county. And that will be, so again, all the blackberries will be removed, and I'm not saying they won't come back, but we have an HOA that will be either they'll hire a landscape company to come in, or there'll be some method to make sure that the development is maintained to high quality standards. As to the gentleman who lives on Stevens Way, I believe that's to the south of this property. Is that correct? Or I didn't quite see on my map where Stevens Way is. There is a cul-de-sac that comes in from the south, but along Stevens Way, we are, as you can see on my development plan, we are proposing there is a strip of vegetation there, and we are proposing a landscape tract F, it's called, to retain some of that landscaping right on the property line. So we don't anticipate this development to be removing any of that landscaping for any purpose. So that strip of landscaping should remain. As to Rebecca's comments, she lives on Idleman. I believe that her house abuts this site on the northeast, sort of the northeast portion of this property. And she discussed springs. We know that we did a geo report out on this property, and we realize there is a lot of subsurface water. And again, we have a storm system that will be constructed, a piping system that will pick up either all the street water and or the spring water that occurs and be piped into our water quality facility, into our detention facility, and then discharged into the existing storm channel B. And again, I'm here to answer any questions. Did I touch on most of those? And as far as the timing of the development, we anticipate this we want to be under construction this summer. So we don't, we've been working diligently in trying to get to this point. We had a couple of snags with the wetland and stuff, but as Ben is aware, I've been pretty much in constant contact with him over the last 2 years, and he's been very helpful. And we're trying to get this thing going as quickly as possible. We realize this is sort of a quote quote weed patch, and we apologize to the neighbors about that. But once this development is underway and the homes are constructed with up to date landscaping, that should change relatively soon.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Shuriak has a question. Can we unmute her? Ms. Shuriak, you'll need to unmute. There you go.
Yeah. Okay. So the property that you mentioned, the home that the renters are moving out soon, and you're going to be renovating that home, that garage. So our property, our house, was the original house, and they owned that home that you're saying that's going to be renovated soon. It was for the son of the owner that they ended up making that house for, and that attached garage. There's two. They ended up making it on part of our property line. Before you sell it or before you do other things, is there a way to contact us and maybe go to the county and figure out property lines on how
that's a private issue? I'll go ahead and respond, Mr. Young. But
yeah, of course, I guess if my surveyors picked that house up and they didn't note it being over the line. They did note it being very close to the line, but if there is an issue down the road and it is over the line, we will certainly do a property line adjustment application so that this property can be sold and mortgaged, and there will be no more concerns down the road. We can work with you on that one, Lily, not a problem.
Okay, perfect. And then what I was told, your information might be on the application on the Clackamas County for phone number to reach you at.
Right, and I can give it to you now if you want it again.
I
can give it to you. It's 503-819-6494.
6494.
That's my cell phone, and I have it with me 24/7.
Okay, I appreciate your time.
Mr. Young. I appreciate that. Mr. Sin, you had a question? There we go.
Hey, this is Devin Singh. So just to clarify, when you mentioned the vegetation that you're going to try to preserve, I'm just making sure that we're looking at the same property. So my property is 10550. It's in that cul-de-sac. And then my backyard is, about 100 feet of adjacent to where you guys are going to be developing, and there's trees lining my property, kind of splitting the two. So I'm just wondering if those trees are on the property line or close to it. Will you guys come to me and delegate that as far as trying to keep them instead of cutting them down?
Are you south of the site? Are you south of the site? I'm not sure what you mean by the cul-de-sac.
Yeah, you're south.
Yes, 10550. Yeah, so I'm south of it. I'm right next to Lily, the lady that was just talking before me. We're right next to each other. Yep.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mr. Young. I think you can address it better than I can.
Again, if you look on, and I don't know if you can bring up on the screen, tract F on the plat that you had earlier. That is an open space tract that's about 15 feet wide that abuts our southerly property line that will incorporate the large majority of the vegetation that he's discussing, and that vegetation is anticipated to remain, and that's why we put that open space tract down there.
Perfect. Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
And again, I can, Lily has my phone number. You can have my phone number. Anybody can call me. I've discussed this project with several of the neighbors, mostly to the north, but not too many to the south. But because I felt it had most impact on the ones to the north. But anybody is welcome to call me, and we can discuss this.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeYoung. Anything further from the applicant, Mr. DeYoung?
Anything from me? No, I believe we don't have anything else. Thank you.
You have the right to have me hold the record open for final argument for another week. Do you want to waive that right?
We'll waive that right.
Okay. With that, I'm going to close the hearing and close the record. Based on the findings in the staff report, this application does or will comply with the applicable approval criteria. So I will approve this application subject to the conditions in the staff report with potentially some minor tweaks to address some of the issues that were discussed. But I will review those findings and conditions and the testimony. I will address all the issues that were raised, but I think the applicant has addressed them and staff have addressed them in the hearing record. As far as I understand the concerns about duplex, but they are expressly allowed by county code and state law requires that the county allow them. So it's not something I can change, or the county can require them to change. The other issues I will address in my decision, but which I will issue within about 2 weeks and send that to the county. The county will send it to parties of record. So that concludes our hearing. Thank you all. Have a good afternoon.
Okay, thank you.